Mishnah says, Haisha sha'amra hiskabel giti. Let's say a woman says, I want you to, she says to her agent, I want you to receive the get on my behalf. Tzricha, then she needs, under those circumstances, when she gets the get, she needs shtei kiteidim. She needs two groups of witnesses. Why does she need the two groups of witnesses? Shnayim sha'omrim befanenu amra. Two witnesses to say that this agent was appointed, that in front of us she asked the two witnesses, in front of us, she asked the witness to receive the get. And two other witnesses to say, in front of us, we saw the agent receive the get and then tear up the get. And it can also be that the same two witnesses are each time the witnesses for that he was appointed and then the witnesses that he received it. On the top of 64A at the top. Or it could be one of the people from the first and one of the people from the second part can be the same, and then you have a third party who joins with them to be the witnesses. So the Gemara says, Itmar, we learned Baal Omer Lepikadon. Let's say the husband says, I gave it to this third party, I gave it to the third party, but I gave it to him only as a deposit. Whereas the third party says Legerishin. He says, I gave it to her, but the third party says, yeah, the husband gave it to me, but he gave it to me to divorce her. So basically we have a dispute. The husband says, I gave it to him, but I gave it to him only as a deposit. I wasn't intending to divorce her. And the third party says, no, he gave it to me to divorce his wife. So who do we believe? Me, Naaman. So Rav Huna Omar, Baal Naaman. Rav Huna says we believe the husband. He says he gave it to her just as a deposit, and we believe him. Whereas Rav Chisda says Shlish Naaman. Rav Chisda says no, the third party is believed. He says he gave it to her to divorce. We believe her. We believe him. Rav Huna Omar Baal Naaman. Rav Huna says we believe the husband that he only gave it as a deposit. Dem Isa del Gerishin Yav anyway, because if he was really intending to divorce her, Hayav Vanila, he would have given it to her. He would have given it to her directly, because the Rashi says we're talking about a circumstance where they're both in the same city. So since they're both in the same city, clearly he could have given it to her directly. Whereas Rav Chisda says, Shlish Naaman, he says, no, the third party is believed, because clearly he believes the third party to give it to him directly. Since he believed him enough to give it to him directly, so now we're going to believe the third party when he claims he gave it to me to divorce. So Masav Rav Abba, so Rav Abba challenges Rav Huna, who says that the husband is believed because we have a principle throughout the Talmud where it states Hodas Baldin Kameya Aidim Dami, that if the litigants admit something, that it's the equivalent of 100 witnesses. Ushlish Nema Mishneim, but that same source says that a third party is believed more than each of the litigants. So Kate said, what's the scenario? Zel Merkach, Zel Merkach. If each one says their claim, and then the shlish is Naaman, but the third party is going to be believed over each of those two claims. So we see from here that the third party is believed over each of those two claims. So the Gemara says, so we see from here the third party is believed. So why does Rav Huna say that the husband is believed here? So he says, Shani Mamon, no, the case of money is different. This Yavu Mechila, there we're going to believe the third party because the husband can, by doing something from the third party, he could be waiving his rights because it's a monetary matter. But in this case, we're not going to believe the third party necessarily because he can't just waive his rights here. The husband can't just waive his rights for a divorce, and so therefore we can believe him in this case. So the Gemara says about Tanya, but don't we learn the Brisa? Inyan Gittin. So don't we learn in the Brisa? So too with respect to Gittin, that we believe the third party. So don't we see that even by a get we believe the third party? The Gemara says no. Gittin Mammon. The word get throughout the Talmud doesn't only mean divorce; it could also mean a contract. And that's what it means in this case. The Gemara says, but really, but Tanya, we have a different price that it says, and so too for a contract. So that must mean when it says for Gittin, it doesn't mean for a contract, it means for a divorce. So the Gemara says, Mide Gabe Adadi, Tanya, do you think the two brises were written next to each other? Two brises weren't written next to each other. And so therefore, since the two brises weren't written next to each other, therefore, for that reason, we could say that they both mean the same thing, that they're both intending just for a contract. Gemara now challenges Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda had said that the third party is believed when he says it was given to him to be a divorce. So the Gemara says we challenge this because from our Mishnah, because what does our Mishnah say? Tanana Isha Sha'amra, if a woman says Iskabeli Gite Tzricha Shtei Kitayim, Shnayim She'amar B'Fanenu Amra, Shnayim She'amar B'Fanenu Kibel V'Kara. That if that the woman says that if she says receive from me my get, she needs two groups of witnesses, two to say it was in front of us she said it, and two to appoint him, and two that say that he received the get and he tore it. But if you're correct, Rav Chisda, that we believe the third party, why don't we just believe him? Why don't we just believe the third party who says it was given to him as a get? So therefore, why do we need the two witnesses? Isn't this refutation of Rav Chisda? So the Gemara says, no. Why do we assume in the case of the Mishnah he doesn't have the get? The third party no longer has the get, so that he's able to make that claim. So the third party no longer has the get in that case. So the Gemara says, okay, fine. Teinach, the Gemara asks another question. Teinach Amra, okay, fine. So we need the witnesses to say that she said that she's appointing him. But Kibo Lamaway. So why do we need the witnesses to say that he received it? Why do we need the witnesses to say he received it? We see that he has it and it was torn. So the Gemara says, Amarav Hamani Rebbe Lazar, he Amar Edem Mistiri Karti. Now this is our mission is following the position of Rebbe Lazar. It says the document itself is not enough to prove the get. You need to see the get handed over. That's the essential part. Gemara has a tangential question now. Kara Lamale, why do we need him to tear the get? Amarav Yehuda Amarav Bishas Agzera Shana. No, they learned this in the time of the persecution, and therefore, if you had a get in your possession, it could be considered something dangerous. Amarabo Moda Rav Huna, the Amar Ihi, Rav Huna himself would admit, Rav Huna who said that we believe the husband who says I gave it as a deposit, Rav Huna himself would admit to the Amar Ihi that if she would claim with the Amar Shlish, do a gerushin Yaheve Nile Mehemna, that if the woman claimed the third party told me that he gave it to him to divorce me, then we would believe. The Gemara says, well, that doesn't make any sense. Do you mean to say, according to Afuna, the third party himself, we wouldn't believe the mehemna, but we would believe her that she says this is what the third party said. So it can't be that that's what Afuna said. Eli Amra. So what is she saying? What Afuna would admit is that if she said that if she says in front of me he gave it to the third party, then we would believe her. Why? Because if she wanted to, she could have had a better claim. She could have said Amra day. She could have said that the husband gave it to me directly, which would have been a stronger claim. So the fact that she said this claim, it proves that she's telling the truth, because if she wanted to, she could have made a stronger claim. So the Gemara says, Bao Amar Lagerish, and let's say the husband says, listen, I intended to divorce her. The husband says, I gave her the get to divorce her. Ushlish Omar Lagerish, and the person who received it, the third party says he gave it to me to divorce her. And she says, no, Sanui Va'avhad, and she says, he gave me the get, but I lost it. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, we're not going to rely upon these people. This is a matter of sexual matters, and anything that relates to a sexual matter, you require at least two witnesses. And so therefore, in this case, the husband and the wife don't count as witnesses, and the third party is only one witness. So you need two witnesses to the divorce. Gemara asks the question, but why not? Why not believe the third party who said he got it? So why don't we believe him? Who's arguing with him in this case? There's a question of Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda says we believe the third party. And in this case, Rav Huna would also agree because the husband's not disputing it. Gemara says, yeah, the difference is, well, she doesn't have, nobody has the get here anymore, so there's nothing to believe. In the earlier cases, they had the get in their hands. Here, they're missing the get. So the Gemara says, Mika Nava Gittin Mitusi other than Lahemne. So Gemara says, well, Lahemne Labal, but at least we can believe the husband here. The husband says I divorced her. Don't we have a scenario? Baal Shamar Girash, if the husband says I divorced my wife, Naaman, he's believed. So in this case, why don't we believe him when he says he divorced his wife? Gemara says, Mikamar Garash. Here he's not claiming he divorced her. Here he's claiming I gave my agent a get to bring to her to divorce her. So he doesn't say divorce her. He says I asked my agent to divorce her. So the Gemara says, yeah, but we have a principle. Why don't we assume that the agent did his agency? We have a position, we have a general assumption throughout the Talmud that an agent does what he's asked to do. If a person says to his agent, go and marry for me a woman, go find me a woman to marry her on my behalf, meaning to say, give her the ring so she's married to me. So under those circumstances, and then then the agent dies and we don't know what he did. Now he's prohibited to marry anybody in the world because we have to be concerned that maybe the agent married somebody for you, so you're married, but you don't know who you're married to. So therefore you can't marry any of her relatives. So every person you potentially marry is one of her relatives. So it's a problem. So therefore, because we have the assumption that an agent does his agency. So if that's the case, why don't we assume here the agent did his agency and that they're divorced? The Gemara says, no, on top of 64b. Yeah, when do we say there's a chazaka the agent does his agency? Only to be strict. Then we could assume it. But as it relates to leniency, we're not going to apply that principle. And here will be a leniency to say they're divorced. The Gemara says, but we should believe her herself if she claims she was divorced. From the principle of Rav Huna, if a woman says to her husband, you've divorced me, we believe her when she says you divorced me, because the presumption is woman wouldn't be so arrogant as to lie directly to her husband's face and claim he divorced her when he never really did divorce her. Where it says, yeah, that's only when there's nobody who's there to help her in her lies. But where there's somebody to help her if she's not telling the truth, in this case, the husband or the agent, she would indeed lie straight to her husband and say he divorced her when he actually never did. Now the Mishnah says, Nara Murasa. So there's 3 stages of a girl's growing: when she's a minor under the age of 12, when she's between 12 and 12 and a half. There's actually more than 3, but there's 3 basic stages. Between the age of 12 and 12 and a half, when she's called a Nara, and from 12 and a half up, when she's called a Bogeris, an adult. So a Nara, so if she's between this age of 12 and 12 and a half, and she's Murasa, she's betrothed, both she and her father can receive the get if she's going to be divorced. Rav Yehuda says, no, you can't have 2 hands that have the same rights. The father can receive the get. Only the father. And then the Gemara tells us another rule: if anybody's not capable of watching their get, a woman is not capable of watching the get, she's not able to be divorced at that point if she can't watch the get. So the Gemara says, what's the dispute between the Rabban and Rabbi Yehuda? Rabban and Safri, the rabbis say, Yada Yisei Rachmana. When she became a Nara, the Torah gave her an extra hand. Just like her father can receive the get, she also now has the right to receive the get. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda Savar B'mkom Avia Yadila Alav Klamu. Rabbi Yehuda says, well, no, if her father is still there, then her hand is not going to be considered anything. And then we said, Kol she'ena yachol l'shmor sagita, whoever can't watch or get, Tan Rabbanan Ketana Yodas l'shmor skita misgareshes. So a minor who knows how to watch or get and protect it, she's able to be divorced. She's old enough to watch it. If she doesn't know how to watch the get, she's not divorced. Ask the Gemara, what's the definition of a katana that knows how to watch or get? Anybody who's capable of watching or get and something else. So the Gemara says, well, what does that mean? This is what it means. Whoever is able to watch something else instead of forget. That doesn't make any sense. Hashota ba'alma. There's nobody who's a greater fool than her, because she's watching something that's not even similar to her get. It doesn't make any sense. Who's old enough to receive the get on her own if she's able to distinguish between her get and something else? So Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rabbi Asi, Tzror v'zarko. Let's say she has a stone and she knows to throw away the stone, egos v'notel, but she knows to keep the nut, and that she knows the difference between a stone and a nut. Then she's old enough to acquire something on her own. This in general, a minor is old enough to acquire something on their own, but not on behalf of others, if she's able to distinguish between a stone and a nut and know that a nut is something to be eaten, unlike a stone. But but an even higher level, if she has an object which she takes from somebody else and she returns it an hour later, that zocha ben la'atzmo ben la'achem, then she's able to acquire both for herself and for other people. So Gemara says, when we said this teaching, so basically, when can she acquire it on behalf of other people? When she's able to know what's hers and what she has to return. But if she just knows what's hers, then she can only acquire for herself. So the Gemara says, Ki Amrisa Kamei de Shmuel, when Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rabbi Asi, said this teaching in front of Shmuel, he said, David Achasi. They're both the same. My David Achasi. What does it mean they're both the same? Amar Rav Chisda, that Shmuel's other position, that a minor in both cases can only acquire something for their own, but they can't acquire something for other people. They can't have the right to acquire something for other people. So Rav Chinna challenges Shmuel. Masav Rav Chinna. So the Gemara tells us that Rav Chinna Verdaan, Rav Chinna, who was from Vardan, he was a Vardanian Jew. He raised the following question against Shmuel's teaching, because it says, how do you do what's called a shituf mavoy? If you have an alleyway and you want all the people in the alleyway to carry, then they do the equivalent of an Erev. It's called a shituf, this partnership to allow them to carry. But everybody has to have ownership over the object that they are acquiring. So meiniach es achavis, you have the barrel, you put it in somebody's alley. The Omar Harezu kol b'nei mavoy, and you say that this barrel. So you take this barrel of wine and you put it down and you say this barrel belongs to everybody in the alleyway. But it can't just belong to them. People each has to acquire it, but it's hard for everybody to go there and acquire it. So one person can acquire it on behalf of others. And you have his adult children acquire it on behalf of the other people. But let's say he doesn't have them. By his Hebrew slaves, because Hebrew slaves are Jews, so they acquire it. So the Gemara says, well, this Hebrew slave, this Hebrew female slave, what are we talking about? Is she an adult or minor? If she's an adult, then she wouldn't be with him anymore, because you have to either marry her or release her. It must be that she doesn't yet have the signs of adulthood. And yet she's still able to acquire it. So we see from here that a minor can acquire for others. So it's a question on Shmuel. So the Gemara says, no, that Shmuel would say, Shana Shitufe Mavos, the Rabbanan. The Shitufe Mavos, this whole concept is rabbinic, because biblically speaking, there's no prohibition to carry in an alleyway. The only prohibition is to carry something from a private domain into a public domain. But carrying within the alleyway is completely permitted biblically. It's just rabbinically. And so therefore, biblically speaking, you can carry. So therefore, we just established this principle. So therefore, we're going to allow the minor shifcha to acquire it. So Amar Rav Chisda, Ishtik Vardan. So Rav Chisda said the Vardanians were quiet, meaning to say they could have responded in a better way. So what could they have responded? They could have responded, it's called a tikkun rabbanon, gain the oraisa tikkun. They could have responded, hey, look, anything that the rabbis instituted, they instituted in the basis of biblical law. And so therefore, for that reason, they could have made they should have made the takana in accordance with biblical law that the minor shifcha can acquire it. And so therefore it's proof that this is not that your response proves that the minor can acquire it. So it's a question on Shmuel. But Shmuel was said, Ki Amrinan called the Tikkun Rabbanan Kendi Raisa Tikkun Milsa de Isla Iker Min Torah. When do we establish that any takana has to be based on the Torah? That's on something that has a basis from the Torah. If a Milsa de Isla Iker Min Torah, well, but if something that's completely without a basis from the Torah, we're not going to apply it. And so this case, that the Shituf Mavos has no basis from the Torah. And so therefore, the Katan was able to acquire it on behalf of others. We'll continue on now at this point, but I just want to stop the recording. So the Gemara says,